Good morning, everybody, both here and at home. A very warm welcome to our fourth Living Faith session. The previous three sessions, of which there are 3 videos online and an introductory video, have actually been viewed by over 700 people. Correction, they've been viewed 700 times. And I haven't got that many family and friends having said that. But on a more serious note, the world at the moment seems beset by a number of major crises. You know, there's climate, nature, Ukraine, refugees, cost of living, and so on. In contrast today, our two speakers will be talking about personal crises. However, the unifying theme and inspirational message is that there is hope and trust in God for everything, no matter how great or how small. I'm also delighted to say that we have some artwork here today from the students at St David's Catholic Sixth Form College in Cardiff, and this artwork depicts those two themes and just reflects them from a different perspective. So, let's come to our first speaker, my close friend Stephanie Knight. Stephanie has West Indian and Irish roots, and Stephanie currently goes to the Citizens Church in Cardiff, but used to be a former parishioner of this parish. And her children went through the Catholic school system here, Christ the King, Corpus Christi, and St David's. But that's enough from me. I want you to hear Stephanie's story.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. As Phil said, my name is Stephanie, but I want you to do something before I start. I want you to take a really good look at me and have an opinion on me. Tell me what you see, and I will tell you why at the end. So as I said, my name is Stephanie, and 8 years ago, I had the most wonderful life. I had 3 beautiful children who were grown. My youngest was 18, and I had a husband of 20 years who I loved more than anything. And one day, my husband kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and that he was so happy that we'd spent the last 20 years together, which I thought was a bit odd, but I take that. And he went out, and he took his life. And in that moment, my whole world stopped. Everything that I knew, everything that I believed in had stopped. Because I didn't need God, because my life was perfect. I had everything. And I was quite proud that I'd managed to do all of that literally by myself. The next morning, I remember waking up and laying on the floor and screaming and just railing at God and saying, if you want me off this floor, then you're going to have to get me off this floor, because I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And how could a loving God take my husband, who was just such a lovely man? And I remember getting up and having this peace come over me. I didn't know what this peace was. I didn't understand it. I think everyone thought I'd had a massive breakdown, because everybody was crying and running around, and I was quiet and I was very peaceful. In the days that followed, I found out that the home that we'd worked so hard for had gone. We'd lost everything, and I had no idea it was coming. My daughter was off to uni. We had lost all her money. That had gone. My autistic son, who we'd been saving so we could have an extension on the house so he could live with us, all the money had gone. There was nothing left, and I was going to be homeless. And I just thought, you know, I've got to get through this. I've got 3 children. I've got to find a way through this. And my friend said to me, come to church. And I actually thought she was crazy. I thought, my husband's just committed suicide, and you want me to sit there and praise God. You want me to go to church and give thanks. And I thought, I'm not going to do it. So the morning that I was meant to go to church, I thought, I'll make an excuse, and I'm going to lie, and I'm going to just anything, because I am not going to go to church. But I found myself getting dressed and ready. As the time went on, I thought, well, don't worry, as soon as she comes, I'll say something. But I found myself in her car. And when we got there, I just thought, I'm going to fake illness. But I found myself in the church. And that was All Nations Church. And I sat at the back, and something had touched my heart. And I knew I was home. I knew that I'd found my home. And I knew that I'd found God. because I felt safe. Through the coming months, my faith grew and I learned to trust in God. And I think because it was one of the first times that I really trusted in God, that I was like a newborn baby. I believed everything. So a couple of months after my husband died, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to have a double mastectomy, and I was very scared. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to be all in. I'm going to really trust God's word. So I stood up in front of my whole church and I said, do you know what? I'm going to have a miracle. I've got cancer, but if our God is a God of miracles, then I'm going to have my miracle. And I challenged God and I said, come on, I'm here, I'm ready, I trust you. Do something. So as the operation got nearer, and I was more nervous because I didn't want to wake up with no breasts, and I was very frightened, and they kept saying they didn't know if it spread, and they wouldn't know till after the operation, but it didn't look good. A week before the operation, my surgeon called me in, and I was dreading. I thought, what does he want? And he said, because I was petite, and there was this new material they were using to create breasts, that I was a perfect candidate. And he said, you've been chosen out of a lot of people, which meant that I was going to wake up with probably better breasts than I started with. I was so happy. The day of the operation, I didn't worry, I wasn't scared, because I just kept thinking, well, if my God is a God of love and healing, then he's got me. What is there to worry about? So I went down for the operation, and I came back, and the surgeon said to me, we got everything. We got absolutely everything. And not only did we get all of the cancer, we're not even giving you chemo, which is quite unusual. And he said, nothing. He said, you're fine. And he also said, I would like to take credit, but you keep giving it to God. He said. So as the time went on, I realized that I had to get a job. I'm dyslexic. I've got no education. I was homeless at 14 and had left school. I've been looking after my autistic children, so I had nothing to put on a CV, but I prayed, and I just said, God, I need a job. And I sat there, and Francis and Phil will tell you, I went to an agency and they laughed. They basically said, well, we don't know what we could do with you, but we'll take you on. And they took me on, and I went to 2 schools, and within, I think it was a day of going to each school, I was offered both jobs. And I knew that this is my God of miracles. This is my God who loves me so much that he is not going to let anything defeat me. And how blessed am I to have somebody that loves me so much that he's going to lift me out of the darkest places. And he's not going to let anything stand against me. And my life has gone on. And I have a wonderful life. I am remarried. My children are doing fine. I'll never forget my husband, and I'll always love him. But God has restored me. And my faith is stronger than ever. And I am the most blessed person that I know. And I am one of the richest people that I know, because I have God. So I just wanted to say to you that in your darkest hour, in your hardest time, God doesn't abandon us. He doesn't stop what people do. That was never his role, because he wants us to all grow and he wants us to learn. But he's going to walk through the fire with you. And when you can't walk through the fire, he's going to carry you. Now, I asked you at the beginning, I said, when you look at me, what do you see? And you've probably seen a small person, somebody who's quite confident or jolly. But what you didn't see was somebody who had walked through the fire, somebody who'd walked through her worst nightmare, somebody who was broken, because God is a restorer and a healer, and he does not allow that. So when he says that he is going to walk with you, he's not only going to walk through that fire with you, he's going to restore you better than you were. And I'm a living proof that you can go through anything with God and faith. And I'd like to thank you for giving me the time to speak. Thank you so much.
I'm sure you all would like me to thank Stephanie on your behalf, both here and at home. Stephanie's story and experience actually resonates on a couple of levels. For me, the first one is on a very personal level, because Adrian was one of my closest friends. On a second level, it's on a much wider front that resonates, what Stephanie has shared with us. And it resonates in the context of some artwork that you'll see in a moment when we flip to the music. Some artwork from the students at St David's College, which depicts the flames burning up the Grenfell Tower. Now, that artwork, and the way I interpret it, and listening to Stephanie's message, is really one about hope rising from the ashes for all of us, no matter how dire our circumstances. Now, some of you may know that Stephanie and I have West Indian background, okay? And actually, we both quite like Bob Marley. And we jointly chose this song, which actually describes this message of hope and love far more eloquently than either of us can do. So I'm just going to hand over to Bob for a few moments.
And
Thank you, Bob. Now, mentioned we had two speakers. Second speaker is my wife, and Frances has stepped in at short notice. It does help if I can control the technology, doesn't it? Frances has stepped in at short notice for one of our friends here in the church who's a GP, and unfortunately he's on call today. Unfortunately for us, but fortunately for whoever he's supporting. Now, Frances and our family, we've been in Cardiff for 20 plus years. Frances hails from Neath originally, and we've been parishioners of this church for that time. Also, along with our daughter and ourselves, we collectively have links with All Nations and Vineyard churches and the groups there as well. Now, Frances' story is one of many, and it's best told by herself and not by me. So at this point, I will ask Frances just to come up and share that story with you. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Frances, and for those who don't know me, as Philip said, I'm his wife, and I'm Emmeline's mum, and she told her story of how God healed her of her ME, chronic fatigue, in the first Living Faith session back in January. My story isn't such a wow story as Emmeline's, but a more simple faith journey of just trusting God. In 2012, both my adult children became unwell, and as you can imagine, it was difficult to watch both of them suffer with chronic illnesses. One which can't be treated easily by the medical profession, and the other not at all. You may be able to relate to worrying about your children or other loved ones when they are ill, and reaching out to God in prayer. As Emmeline's ME was a lifelong, untreatable illness, I even asked God to change places with her rather than watch her suffer. But as we know, God always has a plan, often much better than ours, and all we have to do is trust him. That's nothing new, really, as Proverbs 3 in the Old Testament says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." And just here, I have a cushion. It's still being printed on this cushion today, which I bought only a few years ago. So a very old Proverbs, but still very important. But life is not straightforward. And when it's not, is it God's fault? As Stephanie mentioned, in July 2014, we experienced the tragic loss of our jovial and very kind friend Adrian. We had shared some lovely holidays together, and it was so sad. His death became a very pivotal event in the recharging of my faith. I can clearly remember Stephanie telling me, just a few weeks later, when she was at her very lowest point, that her Nigerian friend had comforted her and reassured her by saying, "God has you in the palm of his hand, and he will hold you." Supported by her new Christian friends who came into her life, when she went back to church, Stephanie's faith grew, as she just mentioned. Then, like the ripples of a stone, when thrown into water, my faith to trust God through our family struggles increased too. Stephanie has been a special friend since we first met in 2001 in the Christ the King School Parents and Teachers Group. God has put us together on that journey of life, and we've shared the highs and lows together for the last 20 years. So, trusting God is now a daily practice for me, but it didn't just happen overnight. When Stephanie invited me to her new church, the focus of the reading and reflection that Sunday was the importance of seeking and putting God first every day and not just on Sunday. And I remembered then when we got married, our first hymn was "Seek First the Kingdom of God." So I try to do that every day by listening to a Bible app while having my breakfast. Or if I didn't manage that, then just saying a prayer of thanks each day before doing anything else. Then, one day, when tuning in to Talk radio station, I stumbled upon a Christian radio station called UCB Radio, which stands for United Christian Broadcast. It was great because I was now able to listen to Christian broadcasters discussing everyday topics and learn about the many charitable things going on in the world while doing my housework. And it's really good to keep our minds occupied when we're doing housework. Young and old presenters with a sense of humour at times and modern Christian music. I love singing, and it was exciting to know that there were young people out there writing about God. It opened up a whole new world of faith for me. So then I sent for some CDs of Christian artists online, and I bought others in the Christian shop in the Heath Hospitals on our visits there, which were quite frequent. My car became a wonderful haven of Christian music and prayer. Putting God first in my life became easier and easier, and I became curious to find out more about God, even at my age. That's why my prop today is a CD player. I brought this along with me. I couldn't bring my car in here, and I couldn't imagine my life now without listening to such songs and inspirational talks. God's with me on every journey I take. So moving on, my story of trusting God goes back to the summer of 2016, when Emmeline experienced increasing abdominal pain. At that point, she had been suffering with ME for 4 years, and during the previous year, 2015, she had intense abdominal pain, and the doctors suspected appendicitis. She lived with pain daily throughout her body, but she knew this pain was different. They discovered it had been caused by an ovarian cyst that had burst, and thankfully it was dealt with through keyhole surgery. However, the following year, in June 2016, Emmeline started to get increasing lower back and abdominal pain, and the doctors thought it was probably a water infection and at first prescribed antibiotics. With her chronic illness, she had learned to cope with pain very well, but the pain didn't go away and just got progressively worse. It continued, and when we were on holiday in July, she called to say she had to go for a scan. The ultrasound revealed a 13-centimetre mass, which they thought could be a large ovarian cyst. So in the first week of August, we saw the specialist from the same department as the previous year. She gave us the diagnosis in a very matter-of-fact way and said it was definitely a large ovarian cyst, like a balloon that could be easily drained. But a different doctor had already booked her in for a more thorough Doppler scan. And when I mentioned this to the consultant, she felt that it wasn't necessary. I nearly asked the receptionist to phone and cancel that scan, but I just had a nagging feeling that Emmeline should have it checked again. She was booked in anyway. We were already in the hospital, and they would be expecting her. So, just half an hour later, and within minutes of using the Doppler scan, this other specialist gave her a very different diagnosis. And he said, it's definitely not a cyst. It has its own blood supply, which means it's some kind of tumour. You can imagine that we were both quite shocked and didn't really know how to react or what to say. Once they discovered this pelvic mass, this tumour, the pelvic mass team had a meeting as soon as they could, and a lovely Indian lady doctor from Calcutta reassured us that she would sort a date to remove it as soon as possible. At that stage, they couldn't give us any information on the nature of the tumour, whether it was a nasty one or not. And that's when my trust in God really kicked in again. I had to be strong and have the confidence that God could sort this out for her. Emmeline and I both knew that God was with us, because despite that news, we felt a sense of peace around us. That peace that transcends all understanding. Even looking back now, it still amazes us how calm we were during those weeks. Neither of us ever cried, and we really felt that God strengthened us at that time. I do remember talking to God more and more, and really trying to believe and trust that she would be all right. At the end of August, we visited West Wales, and while walking along a beach there, I remember picking up a stone, roughly the same size as the tumour. I held it in my hand and asked God to make the tumour go away, and then I threw it as far as I could into the sea. It was symbolic to me that God could wash it all away. That strong belief that everything was going to be all right stayed with me throughout the whole period. Having the faith to trust God kept me strong to deal with whatever was going to happen next. Fear of the unknown in life can cripple us. Faith is considered the opposite of fear, and I believe that God can strengthen us so that we can cope better with whatever life throws at us. Emmeline had the operation on the week before her 26th birthday. She was roughly the same age as I was when I had her by caesarean section back in 1989. Her operation also left her with a caesarean scar, but the tumour was attached to her ovary, which unfortunately had to be removed as well. It was a sad day in many ways, but we were still thankful. We had to wait a further 3 weeks before we knew if it was cancerous or not. Thankfully, again, it wasn't, and the lovely Indian lady surgeon said she had not seen anything like it before and could not find any similar tumour in the medical journals. Our hospital visits did not end there completely, nor did our trust in a God who is able to heal and restore us every day in some way. It goes without saying that God is there for everyone, and he certainly doesn't have favourites. Trusting God through the trials of life and finding out more about his love through scripture, songs, and other people's experiences has made a huge difference to my life. Life will always have its struggles, but finding and trusting God through life experiences can shape who we are, and God can bring his peace even in the most difficult of situations if we reach out to him. I can honestly say now that my most peaceful and joyful times are when I do let go and let God, an expression that many of you may well have heard before. Trusting God can be very liberating. The freedom of knowing that through life's challenges, of which I still have many, God will be there to strengthen and guide me if I keep trusting him. So finally, I found it difficult to choose just one song from the many inspiring Christian songwriters I listened to today. Lauren Daigle does have a song called Trust in You, but her song, Salt and Light, kept coming to the forefront of my mind, so that's the one I've chosen today. Initially, I thought that the salt and light referred to the bitter and sweet lows and high moments of life, but Lauren explains that her song title refers to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, where during his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus encourages his followers to be salt and light. He asks us to affect others people's lives in a positive way. Just as salt seasoning brings out the best flavour in food, and to let our light shine so that we can become beacons of his truth. I hope you enjoy it, as she also mentions God's kingdom. And despite all the negative news in the world recently, God's kingdom is greater. Thank you for listening to my story about trusting God, our best friend and King. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Obviously, that story is very personal to my heart as well, given, for those of you that aren't aware, have just arrived, that Francis and I are husband and wife. Now, just before we close and play out with Lauren, I'd like to share with you some other artwork while the music plays, which is basically a sapling rising from a felled tree trunk. And Francis' story sings to me about trusting God to create new life and hope where there might be difficult circumstances or complete despair. So, on that note, I will bid you farewell for today, and may God keep you and look after you. We come together again on June the 5th, Pentecost Sunday, for a student-led version of Living Faith. But I'll leave the last word to Lauren and Francis' song that she chose.
Revealing who you are, for you are salt and light. Oh, the love that set me free. You bring hope to those in need. You have and redeem my story. Let my eyes see your kingdom shine all around. Let my heart overflow with passion for your name. Let my life be a song revealing who you are, for you are salt and light. You are love's great height. You are deep and